My parents kicked me out after I got pregnant in 10th grade. 20 years later, they returned to meet their grandson, only to be completely shocked by what they saw. My father set a blank check on my coffee table like he was closing a real estate deal, $250,000. He slid it toward me with 2 fingers. The same deliberate, measured motion I remembered from boardroom stories he used to tell at dinner when I was a child, back when I was still allowed at his dinner table. He was 63 now, gray at the temples, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. My mother sat beside him in a Chanel blazer, spine straight as a church pew, hands folded in her lap. They had arrived in a black Mercedes S-Class at 10:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the time because my Ring doorbell logged it, and I have learned over the course of 20 years to document everything. 3 hours, my father said, bring him to the anniversary party Saturday. Some photos with the family, then you go back to your life. The him in that sentence was the grandson they had been bragging about for 4 months to every person they knew in Portland. Their church congregation, the Rotary Club, the mayor's wife at a charity gala, a grandson they had invented entirely from a single line in a Pacific Northwest business magazine profile that read, Myers, who runs her design firm with characteristic precision, is also raising a college-aged child as a single mother. They had read child and decided grandson. They had built a mythology around him, told people he was studying pre-law, that he had his grandfather's jaw. They hadn't invented him from love. They had invented him because they needed him, and if I say no, I asked. My father's jaw tightened in the way it had tightened 20 years ago, right before he told me to get out of his house. We'll contact your child ourselves, he said, explain the family history. There it was, silk over a blade. I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. Unhurried, confident, the footsteps of someone who had no idea what she was walking into. My daughter Lily appeared in the doorway, 19 years old, University of Washington sweatshirt. A copy of Fundamentals of Structural Engineering tucked under her arm. She had my dark hair and her father's height and the specific expression of a young woman who was absorbed by proximity and by nature. 20 years of watching her mother refused to be rattled. My mother stood up from the couch, looked at Lily, looked at me. Something moved across her face. Calculation, then confusion, then the early stages of understanding. Who is this? She said. This is Lily, I said, your granddaughter. The word landed in the room like a stone into still water. My mother sat back down. I need to take you back 20 years because the thing about this story is that it doesn't make sense without the beginning. And the beginning was November 14th, 2004, a Tuesday. Cold and raining in the particular way it rains in Portland in November, not dramatic, just relentless, the kind of rain that soaks through things. I was 16 years old and I'd been sitting on The Secret for 6 weeks. My name is Grace Mayers. In 2004, I was a sophomore at Lincoln High School. Honor roll, varsity debate team, the kind of kid my parents bragged about at dinner parties. My father, Richard Mayers, was a partner at Mayers & Callaway, a mid-sized Portland law firm that had been in the family name for 30 years. My mother, Diane Mayers, ran the household and the family's public image with the same iron efficiency and considered both to be essentially the same job. We were a particular kind of family, the kind where appearances were not merely important, but load-bearing. Where what the church congregation thought and what the Rotary Club said and what the neighbors saw from the driveway were structural features of the life we all lived inside. I had understood this from approximately age 7, which is why I waited 6 weeks to tell them. I knew in some wordless animal way what was coming, I just didn't know how bad it would be. I told them on a Tuesday night after dinner. My brother Nathan, 13 at the time, was upstairs doing homework. My parents were in the living room. My father reading, my mother reviewing something on her laptop. I stood in the doorway and I said the words. My mother closed her laptop. My father sat down his book. And then with no intermediate steps, no questions, no where did we go wrong, no conversation of any kind, my mother stood up, walked to the front door and opened it. You're dead to us, she said. That was it, 7 words, no raised voice, no tears, the way you'd say, take out the trash or turn off the lights. I was 16 years old, it was 9:00 p.m. It was raining. I stood there for a moment, waiting for something, a revision, an asterisk, but wait, there was nothing. My mother held the door and looked at the middle distance and my father had picked up his book again. I walked out, the door closed behind me. I stood on the porch in the rain with no coat, no phone charger, $23 in my pocket and nowhere to go. I want to tell you about the woman who saved my life because she deserves to be in this story before anyone else. Rosa Torres lived 3 houses down. She was 54, recently widowed, a retired school librarian who kept a security camera on her front porch because her son worried about packages being stolen. She had watched me grow up from her garden, and she had always had the particular quality of someone who notices things without making a performance of noticing them. I was standing on her porch at 9:17 p.m. when she opened the door. I hadn't even knocked yet. She'd seen me on her camera, soaked through, standing in the rain, and she came to the door herself. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She gave me dry clothes and a bowl of soup in her son's old bedroom, and a hug that I'm not sure I could have survived the night without. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at her address. My father had apparently assumed I was there, and he was right. Certified mail, signature required. The kind of mail that means what's inside is meant to be witnessed, recorded, undeniable. I signed for it. Inside were 3 pages on Mayers and Callaway letterhead, notarized my father's signature at the bottom. The document stated that I, Grace Elizabeth Mayers, did voluntarily relinquish all familial rights, claims of inheritance, and legal standing within the Mayers family, effective immediately, and that this relinquishment extended to any dependent, born or unborn, now or in the future. My father was a lawyer. He had prepared the papers the very night he threw me out. He'd had his paralegal notarize them and mailed them by certified mail, so I'd have to sign for my own erasure. I held those 3 pages in Mrs. Torres' kitchen and forced myself to read every word. Then I folded them carefully and slipped them into the inside pocket of the jacket she'd lent me. I kept them for the next 20 years. Mrs. Torres let me stay with her for 8 months until I turned 17 and could legally sign my own lease. She fed me, drove me to every prenatal appointment, and sat beside me at the Multnomah County Social Services office while a caseworker, Patricia Acaffer, helped me navigate WIC, emergency housing assistance, and the complicated process of being a pregnant minor with no family support. You're going to need documentation for everything, Patricia told me during our second meeting. She slid a manila folder across the desk. Keep copies of every form, every letter, every appointment. And write down anything people tell you verbally the same day. I was 17, so I wrote it all down. That habit, born in Patricia Acaffer's county office while sitting across from someone who truly cared, became the foundation of everything that followed. Lily was born on April 3, 2005 at Oregon Health and Science University at 6:48 a.m. She weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces with dark hair, dark eyes, and an expression of quiet skepticism she's never really outgrown. Mrs. Torres was there. She held my hand. No one else came. I'm going to move quickly through the next 15 years, not because they weren't difficult, but because I want you to see what I built, not just how hard I had to fight for it. I earned my GED at 17, started community college at 18 on full financial aid, attended classes at night while Mrs. Torres watched Lily, transferred to the University of Oregon at 20 on an industrial design scholarship, and graduated at 23. Lily was 7. She held up a sign at graduation that read, "My mom did it. I still have it framed." I went straight into a junior designer role at a Portland firm called Arcturus Studio. I was good at the work. I'd always been good at it. What I learned in my 20s was that when you have no family money, no safety net, and nowhere to fall, you develop a level of focus that's hard to match. By 30, I was a senior designer. By 33, I had a strong client list and the vision to start my own company. Lily and Cobra Design opened in January 2015, named after the person who inspired all of it. We started with 5 employees, a rented studio in the Pearl District, and clients I'd earned through 6 years of showing up and doing excellent work. By the time Pacific Northwest Business Magazine featured us in March 2024, we had 23 employees, $4.2 million in annual revenue, and a second office in Seattle. One sentence in that article changed everything. Myers, who runs her firm with characteristic precision, is also raising a college-aged child as a single mother. I'd clearly told the journalist the correct pronouns, and she used them. My parents never bothered to read that far. My brother Nathan called me in February, 2 months before my parents showed up at my door. Nathan is complicated. He was only 13 when I left, too young to make adult choices. The man he became grew up believing the version of the family story where I had simply disappeared. He reached out when he was 25, finding me on LinkedIn with a message that read, "I don't know what really happened and I don't expect you to want to talk to me. I just wanted you to know I've thought about you. Over the years, we built something careful but genuine." He lived in Seattle, worked in marketing, knew Lily, and never missed sending her a birthday card. He was the only person in my biological family who knew the truth about my life. He called because he was worried. "Mom and Dad have been telling people at church they have a grandson," he said. "They read that magazine article and just assumed. I've heard them describe him 3 different times. Pre-law, your grandfather's jaw wants to join the family business someday." He paused. "They're planning their 50th anniversary celebration around him. Pastor Harrison wants to make it a whole presentation about family legacy and 4 generations of the mayor's family. They're even live streaming it." I set my phone down. Lily was in the kitchen making coffee, home for spring break in an oversized UW sweatshirt. "What did they do when they found out I was a girl?" she asked from the doorway. She'd been listening. "They don't know yet," I replied. She leaned against the doorframe, those same dark, skeptical eyes meeting mine. "When are you going to tell them?" "I'm not," I said. "I'm going to show them." By the Tuesday, they arrived with a blank check I'd already spent 3 weeks preparing. I took the original disinheritance papers from the fireproof safe in my closet, the same gray Sentry safe I'd bought years earlier to protect the few things I never wanted to lose. The document was still inside my father's envelope, tucked in the pocket of Mrs. Torr's old jacket. I photographed every page on my kitchen table in high resolution, making sure every line, signature, and notary stamp was perfectly visible. The date read November 17, 2004, just 3 days after he'd opened the front door and left me standing in the rain. Then I called Mrs. Torr's. She answered on the second ring, as always. "Rosa," I asked, "do you still have your security camera footage from November 2004? There was a brief silence. "Honey," she said, "I never throw anything away." 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A grainy still image from an old security camera appeared on the screen. A soaked teenage girl stood alone on a porch in the rain. The timestamp read 9:17 p.m. November 14, 2004. The house number was clearly visible. It was me at 16 standing in the rain after my parents had closed the door. "I still have the full recording," Mrs. Torres said. "I'll go anywhere you need me to go," Mrs. Torres said. At 74, she was ready to fly to Portland for me. Over the next 2 days, I prepared carefully. I spoke with a media lawyer, Margaret Solis, who confirmed that telling the truth with documented evidence was not defamation. I also called my brother Nathan and told him, "Don't warn them." "I'm coming." On Saturday, my parents' 50th anniversary celebration was held at the Heathman Hotel with over 200 guests and a live stream. I walked in with my daughter, Lily, and took the microphone. "My name is Grace Myers," I said. "I didn't move to Europe. I was 16, pregnant, and my parents threw me out. They even signed documents cutting me and my future children out of the family." I held up the notarized papers, then I introduced Lily, the granddaughter they had erased. I revealed that my parents had recently offered me $250,000 to bring a fake grandson to the party after inventing his existence to everyone they knew. Then Mrs. Torres stood and confirmed everything. She told the room how she had taken me in that rainy night, cared for me through my pregnancy, and that not once had my parents ever come looking for me. The ballroom fell silent. Pastor Harrison turned to my father and quietly asked, "Is what your daughter is saying true?" My father couldn't answer. A few minutes later, my parents left through a side exit without another word. Many guests stayed behind to apologize and support me. The live stream spread quickly online, and my father's law firm received unwanted attention in the weeks that followed. 6 weeks later, my mother left me a voicemail. She apologized and said she'd been looking at Lily's picture from the stage. "She has your eyes," she said. "I never called back. Some wounds are simply too deep." 3 months later, we celebrated Lily's birthday with Mrs. Torres, Nathan, and close friends. During dinner, Lily raised her glass and said, "To not being erased." On the drive home, she asked if her grandparents would ever try to contact us again. I told her that decision wasn't mine alone. "They signed you away before they ever knew you," I said. "If they ever come back, your voice matters just as much as mine." Lily looked out the window and quietly replied, "I don't hate them. I just don't know them. There's a difference."